Why yes, I can and will play Freebird. The Pokemon TCG has produced a lot of beautiful art over the run of the franchise, and one of the cooler things that they've done with the art, in my opinion, is the broad range of combined and narrative illustrations spread out amongst the decades of releases. Some of you watching this video might not even realize that a decent bit of the cards in your binder technically belong together, at least according to the layout of the art on the cards, and seeing a set of one of these arts that were made in sync with each other, displayed in their proper formatting, can be an eye-opening experience for collecting, and the beginning of a lot of collection side quests. Although there is a lot to cover for these two topics, so let's discuss the history and ongoing legacy of narrative arts today, and then soon we'll discuss combined arts as well. Sound good? Good. Before we get deep into things, if you appreciate the research, time, and money that goes into these videos, you see the runtime for this one, then drop a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to show YouTube and me that you want to watch more videos like this. Narrative illustrations are card sets or cycles where each card's art tells a distinctive part of a story that either is continued or concluded across the other cards in that particular cycle. I'm honestly of the opinion that some combined arts also fall into the category of narrative arts and vice versa, but we'll be following along with the Bulbapedia cited examples for these videos with a few exceptions. Plus, narrative arts in particular tell a story across cards that usually don't have actual combined illustrations, so they're each a bit of their own thing in that regard and equally cool to collect. Let's take a look at what I consider some of the highlights of the narrative illustrations we've gotten so far, because there have been some fun, funny, cute, and heartwarming stories told through Pokemon cards over the years. While the full breadth of this idea wouldn't be fully explored for a couple of years after the initial release of the Pokemon TCG in Japan, the seeds for narrative arts were actually sowed in November 1997 with the release of Rocket Gang overseas. Also known as the Team Rocket set outside of Japan, this expansion of cards saw the introduction of our high-climbing friend Abra here. Innocent seeming enough, this Abra was actually the first narrative or combined illustration card ever printed, though nobody would know that for over 2 decades. Abra sat alone atop its spire without its synonymous piece until the release of Miracle Twin in Japan, also known as Unified Minds outside of it, with the publication of this LGM on May 31st, 2019, almost 22 years after the release of our humble buddy Abra. It even has the same artist as the original Abra after all that time, that being the wonderfully talented Sumiyoshi Kazuki. And while this may be the longest period I've found between the release of an original art and its counterpart so far, it's not the only one that had a long wait. Take for example the art on this Bulbasaur right here. Released originally in March of 1998 as a part of the first series of official expansions obtained via vending machines, Bulbasaur was a part of the blue set and was also part of the first 3 sheets in this series of cards released by Creatures for the card game proper, making it a fun little bit of history by itself. Although you might have noticed this particular copy is a reprint from an early Japanese product called the Quick Starter Gift Set Deck Kit, of which Bulbasaur is from the green deck. Vending machine cards and the like had existed prior, though in different forms going as far back as 1996, but we'll go over them in their own video in due time. So being that it's from a niche release of cards during the initial years of the Pokemon TCG, never saw a placement in a regular booster pack, and didn't have any kind of release overseas, it would have been safe to assume that Bulbasaur here would have been forgotten at the time, and never see any kind of connection later on, but lo, you would be incorrect to assume such a thing. Aided along by the fact that Bulbasaur, like Abra and LGM mentioned before, was also illustrated by Sumiyoshi Kazuki, you can probably start to see where this is going. Thus I introduce to you the Unified Minds printing of Purloin. This Purloin was released in Miracle Twin, aka Unified Minds, in 2019, over 2 decades and 6 generations of games after Bulbasaur was released, and it's awesome to see it exist. Kazuki saw her opportunity in reach and grasped it firmly, it would seem. Both arts feature the titular Pokemon skulking about in some form in a strikingly similar lab setup, and while the art style from one to the other has evolved to fit the modern TCG art aesthetics more closely, it's pretty plain to see what Sumiyoshi was trying to accomplish, and she did just that. These 2 pairings of arts make me smile at the prospect of the possible joy Kazuki had making them, and they're a delightful addition to my personal collection. I want to share a pair of cards that are fairly unique across the entire series, due to the manner in which the cards were released, but also the quote-unquote secrets the cards themselves held. Released as a part of the Japanese P promotional series, and as a part of a collaboration with All Nippon Airways from July to September 2001 during the Pokemon Card EANA Special 01 version campaign, This pairing of Pikachu and Larvitar could be obtained by redeeming any domestic flight boarding pass with ANA, who would then hand over the goods. The goods being the two e-reader cards shown on screen. The arts for these two were both done by Hironobu Yoshida and featured the duo playing a friendly game of hide and seek. Or, if you go based off of the secret that's hidden within these two cards' e-reader strips, an exciting game of hide and seek. Now, why do I say that, you may ask? That's because if you scan these two cards with an appropriate e-reader, you get access to a cute animation of Pikachu and Larvitar playing hide and seek, the title of which when translated is Exciting Hide and Seek. Finding footage of this animation was a pain in the butt to track down, so big thanks to everygameever.org for their video on Japanese Pokemon e-reader games and applications. Go check it out if you're curious to see more or want to learn a bit about it after finishing this video. It's linked down below. The P promotional series has another narrative art hidden amongst its cards, and it's one that's sure to be a favorite for a lot of viewers. It's part of this quadrilogy of Umbreon cards that had its narrative start back in Aquapolis, only to carry on in the P promos, and then eventually be continued in Undaunted during the Heart Gold and Soul Silver era, and then finally reaching its current conclusion 15 years after its beginnings with the Umbreon and Darkrai Tag Team GX in Unified Minds. All four cards feature the titular Umbreon on the rooftops of the Town Unknown map, a port town located in the Puzzle region. A niche area only explored in the Pokemon TCG that is home to the Crystal Pokemon, which would be a fun topic itself for another video. The artist for all four cards is the famed Mitsuhiro Arita, a legendary artist within the hobby who has done the artwork for over 600 cards, including the well-known Mewtwo GX from Shining Legends, aka Mewtube, which, I'm just saying, we might be touching on Mewtube later on in the video, so stick around. Speaking of narrative arts that started in Aquapolis, there were actually quite a few of them. 3 to be exact, at least according to Bulbapedia, and I'm trusting that they've done the legwork. I sadly don't have any of the Aquapolis cards that started a narrative, but I do have a card that ended one, and it's this unassuming Gloom from Crown Zenith. I've seen Gloom here pop up in discussions online about people's favorite non-full art cards simply due to Gloom's facial expression, and the moment in time that the art captures. But I have yet to see someone mention that it's the finishing piece to a 20-year-old story that started in one of the most revered sets in the TCG's history. Both were illustrated by the same artist, Kyoko Umemoto, which has been par for the course with every pairing of cards mentioned so far, but it's not always the case, as we'll see very soon. There was also this Growlithe from Aquapolis that got its companion piece 16 years later in Unbroken bonds with our little friend here. Can you spot the thing that ties the two of them together? Comment down below what you think it is. I'll know though if you just waited around and heard me say the answer. I'm always watching like Santa or the IRS. Before we get to that though, you know how I said very soon like 30 seconds ago? This is that very soon, like right now. This pair of Growlithe are technically the first narrative arts that aren't illustrated by the same artist for both arts. The original from Aquapolis was done by Yukito Baba, and the follow-up in Unbroken Bonds was arted by Tetsuya Koizumi. It became fairly common over time for narrative arts to have different artists, but that wasn't the case until Skyridge released, so while the follow-up didn't come for almost 2 decades, the Aquapolis Growlithe is technically a first. Also, I do owe you an answer to what ties the two together, and the answer is the clock tower in the background. Both Growlithe stand as proud and as strong as the tower behind them. Skyridge awaits though. There are actually a decent number of narrative arts within Skyridge, with most of them being illustrated by different artists from card to card, but there's one set in particular that I want to highlight here. It's this quadrilogy of cards that all feature particular Pokemon flying over a large, what appears to be Ho-Oh-like glyph on the ground. In no particular order, the featured Pokemon are Yanma, Golbat, Skarmory, and lastly, Ho-Oh. This was actually the last printing of a Ho-Oh card without the intercapped O in the name after the hyphen, making it a bit of a history item in that regard. It was also a box topper, so there are jumbo versions of the card kicking around out there, and a decent number of them are PSA 10s. Live your dreams, folks. Any discussion on narrative card arts would be foolish to not include some amount of talk about the recurring goober of the TCG series, Ditto. Ditto has appeared in numerous forms and shapes throughout the years, obviously so considering it's Ditto. And what is a Ditto but an amorphous blob of cells designed to be cute and cunning? It's a role that is played very well as evidenced by this fun little line of cards that came out during EX Delta Species. Yuka Mori did all of the clay models for the photographs, and they're honestly kinda perfect. The absent little Ditto smile in these real-life locations is a fun dichotomy, and something I wish TPCI would do again. There were multiple clay model cards other than Ditto, but these ones were and continue to be secretly the best of the bunch and the best Ditto cards. That is aside from the Crown Zenith one. There have been a few particular narrative art sets over the years that have told more than just the story of a Pokemon, but also the story of their trainers and sometimes even those around them. There are multiple examples of this kind of story being told throughout the years, but there are two examples in particular that I want to highlight. Starting off with Legendary Treasures, we have this Tepig line narrative set that features a growing family. Starting off with the Tepig itself, we're witness to a small family, a husband and wife with their young son celebrating the joyous occasion of adopting their child's first partner Pokemon. Later on, we see the family begin to grow and even age a bit as we move on to Pig Night, now featuring the inclusion of a little sister and everyone is a bit older looking. Lastly, and this is really the most heartwarming one of the trio, we have Emboar standing proud amongst its large and loving family. The young boy from the first illustration is now grown up with a wife and has a child of his own. The parents have become grandparents, and his younger sister is an aunt. Kaneko Ayo is the artist of all three and actually did the art for the Shaman promo we talked about in the ETB video, so I'm obviously a fan of her work to begin with. There have been a lot of emotionally poignant card arts that have manifested throughout the years, but this one in particular I find to be one of the more affecting on a human level, at least for myself. It's easy enough to relate to a card art because it's quirky or goofy, but this one really hits home emotionally. My family life has always been a bit of an odd duck, so it's nice to see an illustration set like this exist. To follow up that, we have this beautiful, almost radiant collection of cards from Generations. Yes, pun intended. The three cards that we're talking about now come from the Radiant collection within Generations. We'll start off with Charmander, who is being a bit of a scamp, having stolen the glasses from his young trainer and running away with them. I like this one in particular as it does a good job showing the emotional highs and lows of teasing someone you care about. The kind of memories you look back on fondly when you're older and realize more of the context that the teasing took place in. Speaking of getting older, as we move on to Charmeleon, we can see that quite a few years have passed, possibly a decade even, as the young boy from the last card now appears to be a teenager in his late teens, studying presumably for some sort of exam at school while having a conversation with Charmeleon. I do find it interesting that they would decide to relax in a tree as, you know, there's an active flame on the end of Charmeleon's tail, but perhaps this is meant to show the maturity and skill that Charmeleon has now. Before we make it to Charizard, I'd like to note that all three of these were illustrated by Akira Komayama, who also illustrated a few cards that are sure to appear in later videos like this breakdancing Genesect. But lastly, as we move on to Charizard, we can see the teenager from before has now become a young man, himself and Charizard appearing to be out on their own Pokemon adventure together. Their bond seems stronger than ever as Charizard does his best to block incoming snow and wind with its wing, trying to protect and warm its trainer. I'm not sure where this card is meant to take place, but perhaps atop a mountain on Potpourri Island during an orienteering expedition? For those of you asking, what is Potpourri Island? It's an anime-exclusive part of the Kanto region where orienteering competitions take place that appeared during the Battle Frontier run of episodes. I know, it's a weird pull for me to make, but I do a lot of research when making these videos. Speaking of, you'll find through doing your own research into this subject that boxed legendaries are a common pairing for narrative arts. It makes sense as they're typically narratively or thematically tied to one another, and perhaps the most well-known narrative arts featuring boxed legendaries are these two cards from Double Crisis featuring Groudon and Kyogre. While already having arts with two of the most beloved legendaries on them along with their respective antagonist teams from each game would be enough, that's not even where it ends. Full arts are a pretty normal thing to see nowadays, but these go a step further. They actually take over the border of the card itself. There aren't a ton of cards that do just that, so it's pretty cool to see. Plus, there are a litany of other Pokemon featured on each card, so the appeal is absolutely there. Particularly if you want them both, as they appropriately stick out of their borders on opposite sides to face each other cleanly. This is an incredibly designed pair of cards, and it's a shame about their price, but I understand why they're so expensive as the artist, Nagamiso, did one of my favorite arts of the Gold and Silver Legendary Trio, that being Raikou V from the Galarian Gallery, which, don't worry, we'll talk about this fella and the rest of the trio in all their glory one day. To get into some Sun and Moon era arts, let's talk about this line of Sun and Moon promos. Released exclusively as a part of a collaboration with the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum during their Edvard Munch retrospective campaign, and also as a part of a Pokemon Center retail campaign, these 5 cards inspired by the Scream from 1893 were distributed to people who participated in both, aka spent the right amount of money. Pikachu was handed out to those that managed to get a first-come, first-served voucher at the time of ticket purchase for the event, and then Mimikyu was sold as a part of a mini portfolio bundle in the museum's gift shop, which is smart because, you know, you exit through it. It was also the only promo item available online on the Pokémon Center store. The last three of the bunch, Psyduck, Growlithe, and Eevee, were distributed through Pokémon Center Japan retail locations only. If you made a purchase of 2 booster packs at a participating store, you would get to choose one of the promos and then repeat the process until you had 1 copy of all 3. I'm willing to bet that many people went to many different Pokémon Centers that day. You know, just a munch hunch. Now, am I ever going to own a full set of these cards? Probably not. But am I eyeing a Psyduck? Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. Do you remember how we mentioned the legendary Mewtube and its artist, the mythical Mitsuhiro Arita, a little while ago? Well, did you know that it actually has a follow-up piece illustrated by Arita, and it's in a set that we've talked about quite a bit already in this video? It's the Mewtwo and Mew GX full art print from Unified Minds, aka Miracle Twin. The original secret art from Shining Legends featured Mewtwo entrapped in some kind of test tube in a lab, presumably the one from Mewtwo Strikes Back, though it's never been confirmed, and the Unified Minds printing shows Mewtwo and Mew teaming up to break Mewtwo out, as evidenced by the shattered glass in the background from presumably the test tube that Mewtwo had been stuck in while sedated. It's a fun follow-up to what is and was one of the more well-known arts in the series even at the time of its release. While I haven't had the chance to hold the tag team in my hands, I have seen a few Mewtubes, and they're gorgeous cards in person, so I get the hype. We'll briefly mention some even bigger narrative art sets in a bit that haven't been touched on during this video, but for now, let's start with this relatively expansive 9-card set featuring Eevee and multiple of its Eeveelutions from the Sword and Shield era of Black Star promos. Starting with my favorite of the bunch, we have a peaceful scene pictured here with Eevee dozing off on a park bench surrounded by lush greens and pink buds. After a quick power nap and presumably a time skip, Eevee has awoken on the bench and evolved into Espeon, the once budding vines next to it draped in blossom bulbs with foxglove and lavender fittingly growing around it. We have multiple other Eeveelutions and their cards to talk about, but Espeon in both senses is hands down my favorite, although I think the next one we'll talk about here is going to be most people watching's preference for both. That being this beach bum Eevee, splashing its front paws about in the shoreline while lazing around on the sand, moonlit sparkles strewn about in the air as it happily plays. Fast forward some amount of time and we're back on the beach from a different angle with a striking rendition of Umbreon, no longer pawing at but dashing along the shoreline. A full moon on display in the background with ripples of water being cast behind Umbreon as it prances along. Nextly, we have another Eevee enjoying its time by running about what appears to be a playroom, chasing after a bouncing ball with a delightfully adorable expression on its face. Macaroon-like pillows are strewn about on the floor, along with a singular heart-shaped one placed up against what could be its very own canopy bed. As we move along in the timeline, this particular Eevee evolves into a Sylveon, and we get a slight confirmation that the bed is in fact Sylveon's, as it's gently perched atop it with the previously mentioned ball now intertwined between 2 of its ribbons. The macaroon and heart pillows from before make a reappearance, along with many other pillows that were either off in the background or just didn't exist before, because seemingly as the Sylveon evolved, so did its bedspread, if we could all be so lucky. Lastly, in this 9-card cycle, we have a 3-card pairing that starts off with, you guessed it, another Eevee. Wow, who really could have guessed at this point? Stick with me though. This is a cool one, and while it's not my favorite of the bunch, it's a close second. This particular Eevee is wandering around a forest through a light dusting of snow at what appears to be the beginning of winter, and it's looking curiously at a budding bulb coming up from the ground with a beautiful sunlit haze being cast against the 2 in the background. While this isn't my favorite pairing of the bunch, this is my favorite Eevee for sure. Which reminds me, each distinct pairing of an Eevee and its Eeveelution, or in the case of the ones we're discussing now, Eeveelutions, shares an artist. None of the separate pairings do, but within each pairing itself, there is a shared artist for them. Got it? I hope so, because I'm really bad at this whole words thing. Moving on now, the previously discussed Eevee friend of ours walking about in the wintry woods has 2 distinct cards tied to it. First up is this gorgeous rendition of Glaceon, now seen in the woods during the dead of winter as a storm blusters around it. The Glaceon doesn't seem perturbed though, as it has built a small shelter for itself as it protects the now blossoming bud, doing what it can to keep it safe and growing as the harsh world around it ravages the environment. I'd bet that like a mountain dog though, this Glaceon wouldn't have it any other way, and as we'll see in the next card, it did a great job protecting its treasure. Spring has now sprung and abounding Leafeon is seen barreling towards the fully bloomed flower that has gone on quite the journey throughout these cards. This is another fantastic Eeveelution rendition, and while my Espeon favoritism is coming through with my choice for the #1 pairing of this cycle, I really do love the art done for these three. It's very painterly and soft, which shows the adorable qualities of these Pokemon very well in my opinion. With that said, let's move on to some of those larger narrative art sets that we mentioned at the beginning of the Eevee section here. While I'm not going to go in full detail on each of these or talk about every big set of cards, I did want to at least briefly mention these for those of you out there to be made aware of them so you can start digging through your bulk. The Unleashed set during the Heart Gold and Soul Silver era had an 18-card narrative set featuring multiple full evolution lines, a Manaphy, a Lucario, and even Plusle and Minun. All of the Pokemon in this narrative set are seemingly battling on a Greystone battlefield laced with different Pokemon typing flags, and a forest on the outskirts of the arena. Minun even appears in the background of Plusle's cards, seemingly more or less confirming the implied connection between all of them. The Furious Fist set released during X and Y was rich with these expansive sets, having 4 narrative art sets with at least 6 cards in them, and one of them even includes a booster pack as a part of it. But the biggest one of these sets by far is one that stretched the entirety of the Sword and Shield era of cards with over 25 cards, all appearing within Peaceful Park, a seemingly TCG-only location as far as my research can tell that's depicted on each one of the cards within this cycle. I won't go over all of them, but a few of my favorites are this DeWatt from Astral Radiance chilling at a fountain, Marshtomp from Fusion Strike having the time of its life, presumably in the same fountain as DeWatt, and this Kamala here from Lost Origin who's just a sleepy guy catching the tail end of some shade amidst a bright sunny day. This is certainly the biggest narrative art set of cards, but there are still more to go, so let's carry on. We just mentioned a Marshtomp from Fusion Strike in that big set of narrative illustrations, but there are a few more small sets within or that began in Fusion Strike, and this one is my favorite. It's a triptych of cards featuring Mudkip, Araquanid, and Sandygast on a beach. You can see that Sandygast is in tears in the background of Mudkip's art, while Mudkip is seemingly looking around the water for something, but we don't know what. Araquanid's art doesn't feature Sandygast, but it does also show Araquanid looking around for something that we're unaware of, though there is a cute little red shovel featured in this art, which even if you're unaware of this set of cards being connected is a fun nod to Sandygast. Lastly, as we get to Sandygast itself's card, we see that Mudkip and Araquanid were looking for and gathering trinkets to help cheer up Sandygast, which they have seemingly accomplished. Sandygast has a very cheerful look of amusement on its face, and even has the red shovel that featured in Araquanid's art. Perhaps an origin story for this unique feature of Sandygast, as we couldn't see the top of its head in Mudkip's art. Moving on to Brilliant Stars, we have a fairly iconic set of illustrations for this trio of narrative arts, and one of them was from back when the games were debuting on the 3DS, so this one took a little while to get there. We're not going to go chronologically for this one, so let's start at the beginning, which actually didn't release until the end of this saga, which was this full art printing of Charizard V from Brilliant Stars. It features Charizard and Venusaur locked in fierce combat with a fire raging across the land as Venusaur appears to have the beginnings of a wrap put in place with its vines. The follow-up piece to this one, which actually released first during the X and Y era, has Charizard now fully ensnared in Venusaur's vines, flames bellowing from the edges of its mouth in anger or frustration. This is actually a particularly interesting card, and not just because of its high price, which is in fact very high, but regardless. No, this card is interesting, 1, because of its art, but 2, because it came bundled inside of a cool product. The Pokemon Card Game Art Collection book that was published back in September of 2016. This thing features tons of art from cards in the Pokemon TCG, pages of Pikachus, behind-the-scenes work-in-progress comparisons to final card arts, and so much more that I couldn't find photos of. This is absolutely a grail item to find one day, and hopefully still with a copy of Charizard EX inside of it. Lastly, to round out this trilogy of Zard's cards, we have the alt art promo print of Brilliant Stars Charizard V that we mentioned earlier, featuring a completely decimated forest as the landscape, complete with fire still smoldering in the background. Charizard and Venusaur have decided to call it quits and are in the process of getting ready to take a nap. It's a calm resolution to what seemed to be a fiery battle. This card came out of the Sword and Shield Charizard Ultra Premium Collection, or UPC. That UPC also contained a nifty playmat that I've been filming all of the B-roll for this video on. As we move into the Scarlet and Violet era, let's begin with another fun and family-oriented set of cards, this time starting with the Ralts illustration rare from Scarlet and Violet base set. It's a cute art featuring a young married couple moving into what is probably their first home with their Pokemon Ralts. Ralts seems somewhat aloof to the whole situation, more interested in figuring out what the wall is doing than helping, but it's cute while doing nothing, so that's honestly okay. Moving on to the next illustration rare in this set, the home is much more lived in. The woman from before is holding the couple's baby and Ralts has evolved into Kirlia, now very attentive of the baby rather than the wallpaper, showing a progression in maturity and curiosity after evolving. Lastly, as we end this section on the special illustration rare of the group, our once spry and young couple is now in their elder years, being tended to by their now fully evolved Gardevoir. Gardevoir sitting holding yarn for the wife to crochet with while the husband sits nearby holding a camera, presumably taking some of the many different photos that have littered the background of these cards and the home over the years, which is a nice touch across these illustrations. Paldea Evolved is up next, and while there are quite a few narrative art sets, including ones for all three Scarlet and Violet starters in this set, I want to highlight one set in particular, mostly because it's my favorite one of the three starters, but I also think it's the cutest narrative arts of the ones in the set. I say these are the cutest arts based almost solely on this first one of the three cards, our little friend Fuecoco. Homie here is big chillin', vibing like crazy in a backpack, while being pushed around the grocery store by its trainer and munching on an apple. We can all hope to reach this level of no cares given one day. As we progress, Crocolore is here and he is a bit of a scamp. Having seemingly gotten out of the sight of its trainer for presumably about 2 seconds, if Pokemon are anything like cats, it is causing mild chaos in what appears to be a different section of the grocery store, piling a mountain of fruits and vegetables into the trainer's backpack while leaving many others strewn about on the floor. Though as seems to be the theme amongst many of the sets of illustrations we've talked about today, the final evolution in Fuecoco's line, Skyridge, appears to have gained a level of maturity it hadn't had before. Instead of being rambunctious or not doing much at all aside from being a cutie, Skyridge now helps their trainer with the shopping, taking the backpack they were once carried in and now carrying it on their back while seemingly having a conversation with their trainer. I feel like this is a cute and relatively heartwarming set for anyone who has had a younger family member that they've seen grow up over time, as it mimics a lot of those through the years traits well. Obsidian Flames is home to a triplex of cards that are all done by my favorite current artist in the entirety of the TCG, and they just so happen to be my favorite bird Pokemon, and form a narrative illustration set. Wowee! That being these three cards that were shown at the beginning of the video, the Obsidian Flames Full Art Pidgey illustrated by Jerky. These might be the most standout cards for some in this video simply due to their striking art style. I've seen and gotten varying opinions from both ends of the extremes on these three, but they're some of my favorite arts in the entire series. There are very few, if any, illustrators working on or for the TCG right now in this particular style, and having my favorite of all of the non-legendary bird lines being done in this style is a huge plus for me. It doesn't hurt that Pidgeot EX was powerful enough to be in the meta deck that I played online during Regulation G. Shout out to Charizard Thump, you treated me so well. If any cards get more shine and attention from this video, I hope it's these ones, because I think Jerky deserves a lot more love, and I'd hate to see the cost of my favorite artists go up while I'm collecting them, but I want more people to know about their amazing illustrations. Scarlet and Violet's 151 set is home to a healthy amount of narrative arts, but we're going to focus on one line because it's my second favorite starter line and my favorite starters don't have any narrative illustrations. This one is for you in spirit, for Alligator. We will talk about a few other narrative sets in 151 though before moving on. Onto the line I'll be discussing first though. Most would think I'm talking about the Charmander line ending with the now iconic SIR Charizard, but no. 1, it's not my favorite of the original starters, and 2, I don't have all of those, so it's not as fun to talk about them. What I do have all three of though, and is my favorite line of the OGs, is Bulbasaur here and its evolutions. These are such wonderfully peaceful and entrancing arts, starting here with Bulbasaur. The little guy is having a powerful snooze and enjoying every second of it. It's a beautiful day, he's catching some rays between the bouts of shade, and quite frankly, I'm jealous. I hope to sleep this peacefully at least once in my life. Ivysaur, on the other hand, is wide awake and full of amusement with a mellow-looking pond, poking at the surface of the water with its vines and causing little ripples that warp its reflection. The art on this one is quite colorful and full of detail, but Venusaur takes it up a full notch. This might be my favorite card that I've ever pulled myself. 1, because I love Venusaur, but 2, look at this art. Venusaur is in its lane and flourishing back there, relaxed amongst a field of gorgeous multicolored flowers after having fully blossomed itself. The texture and speckling on this one is also something to behold if you ever get a chance to see it in person. Hands down my favorite card that I've ever pulled myself. The Bulbasaur line, along with Squirtle and Charmander's lines, all got narrative illustrations in 151, and while Bulbasaur's is my favorite, I'd be remiss to not mention the other two at least. Charmander and its evolution's narrative tells the tale of a young Charmander climbing out of a valley, slowly making it to a midpoint when they evolve into a Charmeleon, and finally, when they've evolved into a Charizard, the once crag-bound lizard takes flight through the air with the hole it crawled out of stretching deep into the background. Squirtle and its evolution go in the complete opposite direction though. Starting off with a very cute looking Squirtle splashing about on a beach, we then proceed to Wartortle, who has begun a journey along the coral-rich seafloor a few meters down. But as we move to Blastoise, Blastoise is descending deep down to the dark recesses of the ocean, and while I have a fear of dark water, this is one of the cooler arts I've seen for a starter. I really adore the general idea that was planned out for each evolution line with them in their environment and evolving along with it. But I think that'll do it for 151, at least for this video. Shrouded Fable only had one narrative art set, but it's a cool one and another one I highly recommend checking out if you haven't, like with the jerky arts earlier. This line of Duskull and its evolutions were done by former Game Freak employee and the first Westerner to ever officially design Pokemon, James Turner. Having initially worked on Colosseum and then finalizing the design of Shadow Lugia for Gale of Darkness, he would eventually go on to work for Game Freak themselves. His first generation that he designed for was Generation 5 with Black and White, having designed multiple lines like the Vanillite and Golett ones. He eventually left the company in June 2022 to form his own studio, All Possible Futures, and was presumably either shortly before or right after that asked to illustrate for the TCG. The Duskull line here are 3 of the only 4 cards that Turner ever did the art for and are the closest I've seen to Jerky's style, so I really wish he would come back to do more. I really appreciate the more minimal and flat style that the two of them seem to have in common, and I wish we could get more in that style, but, you know, perhaps it would lose its luster if there were more, so I guess I don't know what I want. What I do want, though, is to tell you about how Obsidian Flames and Stellar Crown tie in together. It started innocently enough with perhaps everybody's favorite promo of the Scarlet and Violet era, the Grumpy Charmander from the Obsidian Flames ETB. Initially a standalone piece when it was released, we later saw 2 tie-in pieces from Stellar Crown with that set's Bulbasaur and Squirtle illustration rare printings. Charmander was initially the only one with a Pidgey friend, even if he was locked off from getting to them, but then comes along Bulbasaur and Squirtle, both hanging out with some Pidgeys, one antagonistically and one sleepily. Both completely valid as compared to Charmander's seemingly hungry stare at the Pidgey outside its window. Maybe it's a good thing that Charmander is stuck inside for the sake of those Pidgeys. Before we move on, I do want to at least mention Pokemon TCG Pocket, as there are quite a few narrative illustrations in that which, funny enough, started with a Pidgey evolution line in Genetic Apex. You know, since Pidgey is on the brain over the past few narrative sets. Lastly, to round out the video, I'll mention one that I know of that isn't on Bulbapedia yet, plus it's an interesting one to talk about for a few reasons that we'll see. I don't like dating these videos, but Mega Evolution in the States is less than a month old, so it's understandable that this one isn't on Bulbapedia yet, but the rest of the internet knows about it, that's for sure. I'm of course talking about the Cosmic Eclipse Marshadow and its follow-up illustration rare from Mega Evolution. Initially an innocent seeming enough card when released during Cosmic Eclipse, Marshadow here is telling us to be very quiet as it's stalking Pikachus. Pikachu seems aware of the situation though and will presumably dart away before Marshadow gets its claws in. But no, as we see now in Mega Evolution, Marshadow has succeeded in hiding within Pikachu's shadow for long enough to begin preparing to strike. Who knows what fate awaits Pikachu? It certainly can't be worse than the fate of the Cosmic Eclipse Marshadow's card's price. I've jump scared with prices before in these videos, but look at this one side by side. Straight to the moon, y'all. This one isn't even subtle if you look at the amount of them available for sale in the image from late September compared to mid-October. I was really hoping to get a copy of this Marshadow for the video, but not at these prices, I'm not. Also, my thoughts go out to the person who paid $149 for their copy of the Mega Evolution Marshadow IR, unless they're a scalper. Buy high, sell low. It's foolproof and time-tested. You've got this, bud. So as you've seen and heard throughout this video, narrative illustrations have a long and storied history with the TCG and even beyond in the next generation with TCG Pocket. Going as far back as Rocket Gang in 1997 all the way to the modern day, there are dozens of these sets of cards out there and they're a joy to collect. particularly the non-full art ones, because I found it's a lot easier to find those in bulk boxes for cheap, but as you can tell by my collection, I still enjoy the full art ones immensely. I think that's part of what makes narrative illustrations so great, is that there's almost surely a set out there with Pokemon you like and an art style you enjoy, so go out there on your own and see what you can find. There are tons more than what I featured in this video, and there are even the combined illustration sets, which, weren't we saying at the beginning of all this that those would be the next video?